Before Dorian Vale understood that his marriage had become a carefully engineered trap, one hidden basement door exposed Seption designed to destroy his freedom, reputation, and entire life forever.
Most men discover their marriage is over through a lawyer, a confession, or a hotel receipt. I discovered mine when a stranger stood in my basement, pointed at a wall I had looked at for 14 years, and whispered, "There's someone breathing behind that door." The problem was simple. I did not have a door there. Minutes later, police cut through 4 steel locks mounted on the outside and found an empty room, a speaker playing human breathing, and a prepaid phone activated less than an hour earlier. 2 days later, detectives opened a storage unit rented in my name. Inside were the belongings of a missing woman I had never met. Then I found her photograph hidden inside my wife's favorite art book. My name is Dorian Vale. I am 49. I restore century-old windows for a living. And until that week, I believed patience was one of the strongest things a man could bring into a marriage. I was right about patience. I was wrong about my wife. She had spent years learning my signature, routines, passwords, and habits well enough to build a criminal story around me. What she forgot to learn was what I would do once I stopped trusting her. Stay with me, because the final move changed everything. And if you like stories about betrayal, consequences, and people who finally stop being underestimated, subscribe, hit like, and tell me what you would have done in my place. The leak started at 6:36 on a Monday evening in late October. I had just closed my historic window workshop in Burlington's South End and was driving home with cedar dust still on my sleeves. Isolde was in Newport, Rhode Island, coordinating a donor weekend for the Arts Foundation where she worked. She had left Saturday with 2 garment bags and the same calm efficiency she brought to everything. At the time, I still believed knowing someone's routines was the same as knowing them. Water was spreading across the laundry room floor from a cracked line near the utility sink. I shut the nearest valve, moved a stack of old trim, and called Lake Champlain Water Recovery from the magnet on the freezer. Bram Heller arrived 45 minutes later with a thermal camera and a red toolbox. "Could be behind the wall," he said. I went upstairs to heat soup and let him work. About 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Bram. I answered while standing in the kitchen with a spoon in my hand. "You get lost down there?" I asked. He did not laugh. "Mr. Vale, are you alone in the house?" Something in his voice made me set the spoon down. "Yes. Are you sure?" I remember looking toward the basement door as if the answer might be standing on the other side. "My wife's out of state. Why?" There was a pause, followed by a sound I could not identify at first. Then Bram lowered his voice. "I moved that tall metal cabinet near the east wall because the moisture line runs behind it. There's a door back there." I frowned. "No, there isn't. There is. Bram, I've owned this house 14 years. I understand. But there's a door, and it has 4 locks on the outside." Another pause, and I can hear somebody breathing behind it. I was down the stairs before the call ended. Bram stood near the old green cabinet Isolde had insisted we keep, because according to her it was perfect for ugly things. It had always been pressed flat against the poured concrete wall. Now it sat at an angle, its rear corner dragged 3 feet outward, leaving a dark rectangle exposed behind it. The door was painted the same dull gray as the basement and fitted so cleanly into the wall that the seam looked like an ordinary repair line. 4 black hasps ran down the frame, each secured with a separate brass padlock. Bram held up one hand before I got too close. "Listen, at first I heard the dehumidifier, then the tick of cooling pipes. Then it came, a slow inhale, a pause, an exhale. Human, weak, repeating. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like missing a step in the dark. I walked closer, ignoring Bram when he told me not to. "Hello," I shouted. The breathing continued at exactly the same rhythm. I hit the door once with my palm. "Can you hear me? My name is Dorian. We're calling for help." Nothing changed. Inhale, pause, exhale. I pulled at the top lock, then the second, as if metal would somehow surrender because I wanted it to. The hasps were bolted into studs, not decorative, not improvised. Somebody had gone to trouble. Somebody had wanted that door sealed. Bram called 911 while I stared at the locks. Every explanation I tried failed at the same point. The breathing. A forgotten cellar might explain a hidden door. but not a recently active sound behind 4 locks mounted on the outside. 2 patrol officers and Sergeant Vika Rowe arrived 7 minutes later. She asked how long the cabinet had been there, who used the basement, and who was currently in the house. I told her the cabinet predated our move and that only Isolde and I used the basement. "Where is your wife?" she asked. "Newport. Work event." She studied me briefly, then went downstairs. They cut the locks with a battery grinder. From the top of the steps, I heard metal scream against metal, heard something heavy fall, heard a command I could not make out. Then silence, real silence, no breathing. I stepped forward, but an officer blocked me with his arm. "Stay here, sir. I wanted to ask if someone was alive. I wanted to tell him it was my house. Instead, I stayed. Maybe some part of me already understood that ownership had become a complicated question. 10 minutes later, they let me see the room. It measured perhaps 8 feet by 10. The walls were unfinished concrete. There was no bed, no chair, no clothing, no blood, no sign that anyone had lived there. A single LED bulb hung from a temporary cord, unplugged. In the far corner sat a compact Bluetooth speaker. Beside it, on top of an upside-down paint bucket, lay a prepaid smartphone with a cracked corner and no case. The breathing sound had stopped because the phone screen had gone dark. One patrol officer crouched near it in gloves. He looked over his shoulder at Sergeant Rowe. "Device is warm. Recently used," she asked. "Looks like it." I heard myself say, "So no one was in here." The officer looked up at me. "Doesn't appear so." Bram let out a breath that sounded half relieved, half sick. I should have felt relief too. Instead, something colder moved through me. If the breathing had been real, the situation would have been horrifying but simple. A person in danger, a rescue, a crime with a visible victim. But an empty room with a speaker was different. An empty room meant performance. Someone had wanted a specific sound heard by a specific person at a specific moment. Sergeant Rowe asked Bram to walk through exactly what he had done after entering the basement. He explained the water line, the thermal camera, moving the cabinet, seeing the locks, hearing the breathing, calling me. Then she asked whether anyone knew he was coming to the house. Bram shrugged. "Dispatch. Me. Whoever placed the service request." I turned toward him. "I placed it." He blinked. "Not according to the ticket." "What?" Bram pulled his phone from his pocket and opened the job record. It came in through the website around 5:50. Same address, same name, your name. I stared at the screen. Dorian Vale. My address, my mobile number, my email. "I called you," I said. "I used the magnet." Bram looked uncomfortable. Maybe dispatch duplicated it? Maybe. But I knew I had not filled out an online form. I had dialed a number. I could still remember the woman who answered telling me Bram would arrive within an hour. Sergeant Rowe asked to see my phone. I handed it over. She checked the call log. There it was. 5:49 p.m. Outgoing call to Lake Champlain Water Recovery. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. She handed the phone back. Could be clerical. Every fact had an innocent explanation by itself. Together, they felt arranged. Detective Mirek Sloan arrived just after 9, wearing dark trousers and a rain shell. He inspected the room before speaking to me. "I'm going to ask questions that may sound strange," he said. Strange is not the same as accusatory. Then he asked who built the room, who had access to the basement, what contractors had worked there, and who had chosen the cabinet's position. He looked toward the hidden room. Who chose where that cabinet sat? The question landed softly and hard. I pictured the day we moved in, movers bringing boxes. I sold downstairs. Younger by 14 years. Directing traffic with a roll of blue painter's tape on her wrist. I remembered suggesting we move the cabinet closer to the stairs. I remembered her saying, "Leave it. It hides the ugly patch in the wall." "My wife," I said. Sloan did not react. He simply wrote something down. I called Isolde at 9:17, straight to voicemail. I texted that police had found something strange in the basement and asked her to call. I pictured her moving through a Newport ballroom with a headset, solving problems before guests could see them. She had always been exceptional at making complicated events look effortless. Near 10:30, after the prepaid phone and locks were bagged as evidence, Sloan questioned me at the dining table about our marriage, finances, work schedules, and travel. I answered everything. Innocent people make one dangerous assumption. That innocence is obvious to everyone else. At 10:42, Isolde finally called. "Dorian?" Her voice was breathless. "What happened?" "I just saw your messages." I stepped into the kitchen but stayed where Sloane could see me. "Police found a hidden room behind the basement cabinet." Silence. "A what?" "A room, locked from the outside." "Dorian, what are you talking about?" "There was a recording inside. Breathing. The water guy found it." Another silence, shorter this time. "That's insane." "Yes, are you safe?" "I think so." "Do I need to come home?" I remember that question because it sounded loving. I remember thinking she was giving me control, respecting my judgment. "Your event ends Wednesday, right?" "Thursday morning." "I don't know." "Sloane says they may have more questions." "I can leave tomorrow. We'll talk in the morning." She lowered her voice. "Dorian, I'm scared. So am I. I love you. I love you too." Those were the last words I said to her that I still believed. After the call, Sloane watched me for a moment. She sounded surprised. "Yes." "You're sure?" I almost laughed. "Detective, if I stop being sure what my wife sounds like when she's surprised, I have bigger problems than a hidden room." He did not laugh back. At midnight, after everyone left, I stood alone in the basement. The cabinet remained pulled away from the wall. Yellow evidence tape crossed the open doorway. Without the locks and the breathing, the room looked smaller, almost pathetic, like a stage after the actors have gone home. I crouched and examined the floor near the threshold. There were faint scratches in the concrete where the cabinet had been moved before. Not once, many times. The marks were layered, pale arcs against darker gray. I sat on the bottom stair. For 14 years, I had believed I knew the geography of my own home and the woman who shared it. I knew which window stuck in summer and how Isolde folded towels. Looking at that concealed room, I understood that familiarity can be detailed without being true intimacy. Then I looked at the door behind the cabinet and understood something I would spend the next month learning in harder ways. Knowing the habits of a person is not the same as knowing the person. At 12:18 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from Isolde. "Please lock the basement door tonight. I don't like the idea of that room being open." I read it twice, then a third time. Because she had not asked where the room was. She had not asked what wall. She had not asked what cabinet. And suddenly, in a house I had owned for 14 years, the only thing that felt unfamiliar was the woman who knew exactly which door I meant. I slept for maybe 2 hours. At 5:40 the next morning, I woke on the couch and saw yellow evidence tape through the hallway door. I made coffee and reread Isolde's message about locking the basement. In daylight, it sounded less like concern and more like knowledge. At 7:15, Detective Mirek Sloane called and asked whether I could come downtown. He said it casually, which made me more nervous than if he had sounded urgent. "We found something connected to the prepaid phone," he told me. "I'd rather walk you through it in person." I showered, put on a clean work shirt, canceled 2 restoration appointments, and drove to Burlington Police Headquarters with both hands fixed at 10 and 2, like I was taking a driving exam. On the way, I kept trying to imagine what connected meant. A store receipt, a name, a camera image, anything but what he eventually showed me. Sloane sat me in a small interview room with a square table bolted to the floor. He placed a photograph in front of me. It showed a row of storage units in Winooski, white roll-up doors under fluorescent lights. One unit was open. The number above it was 208. "Recognize the facility?" he asked. "No. Ever rented storage there?" "No. Ever rented any storage unit?" "Not in years." He placed a second page down. It was a rental agreement. My name was typed across the top, my home address, my date of birth, my driver's license number, my phone number. At the bottom was a signature that made my mouth go dry, because it looked like mine, in the way a forged painting can look right until you know where to stare. "That isn't my signature," I said. Sloane leaned back. "It resembles the signature on your license, because whoever did it copied me. Maybe, not maybe." He did not argue. He simply turned over another photograph. Inside Unit 208 were 2 plastic bins, a canvas duffel bag, a pair of women's boots, 3 folded sweaters, a toiletry pouch, and a framed photograph of a dark-haired woman standing in front of a mural painted with orange birds. A prepaid debit card sat in an evidence bag near the bottom of the frame. Her name is Alara Venn, Sloan said. 34, freelance mural artist. She was reported missing 13 days ago by her sister. I looked at the woman in the photograph. I've never met her. The debit card was funded from an online account opened under your identity. I did not open it. The account has existed 9 months. I did not open it. 2 cash deposits were made into it in Winooski. I did not make them. He watched me closely, not cruelly, but professionally. Dorian, understand where I am. I have a concealed room in your house containing a remote device. I have a storage unit in your name holding property belonging to a missing woman. I have a financial account in your identity. If you were sitting in my chair, what would you think? I stared at him. I'd think someone had gone to a lot of trouble to make sure I was sitting in this chair. For the first time, something shifted in his face. Not agreement, not yet, but interest. Who? I don't know. Enemies? I restore windows, detective. My biggest enemy is cheap vinyl replacement glass. He almost smiled, then stopped himself. Anyone with access to your personal information? I could have said Isolde. The word rose in my throat and stayed there. A marriage teaches you to protect the other person reflexively. Even when doubt appears, loyalty often continues moving on old momentum. My wife, my accountant, my workshop bookkeeper, probably half a dozen institutions. Your wife know your passwords? Some. Your signature? She's seen it thousands of times. Your license? We share a filing drawer. He wrote all of that down. I left the station at 9:32 with no charges and no comfort. Sloan said I was not under arrest, but asked me to keep my phone on and tell him before leaving Vermont. Suspicion, I learned, is rarely dramatic. It is a detective making a reasonable request, while you realize every ordinary action can now be read 2 ways. I drove home. Isolde had texted that she was leaving Newport early. Instead of answering emails, I went upstairs and stood beside her nightstand. 3 art books sat beneath the lamp. I hated myself for wanting to search them, then decided hatred was less important than the truth. I hated myself for it for approximately 30 seconds. Then I opened the first book. Nothing. The second contained 2 exhibition tickets from Montreal and an old receipt. The third was a thick catalog from a contemporary art biennial in Chicago. Isolde loved that book. She had read the essay so many times that the spine had softened. I flipped through the back pages, expecting nothing, and a small square of photo paper slipped out onto the duvet. Alara Venn smiled up at me. The room did not spin. That would have been easier. Everything stayed perfectly still. The photo was not the same image from the storage unit. Here Alara sat at a cafe table, hair tied up, looking away from the camera. On the back in blue ink someone had written, EV, Santa Felt, 7 weeks. I sat on the edge of the bed and read those 5 words until they stopped behaving like language. The front door opened downstairs at 2:47. Dorian? Isolde's voice traveled through the house with the same warmth it had carried for 14 years. I slid the photograph into my shirt pocket and went downstairs. She dropped her suitcase beside the entry bench and crossed the room fast. Oh my God. Her arms went around me. She smelled like airport air, rain, and the cedar perfume she had worn since our 10th anniversary. Are you okay? For one dangerous second, I almost folded into her. Habit is powerful. So is grief. Then I remembered Alara's face against my chest. I'm fine. She pulled back and touched my cheek. You look awful. Didn't sleep? Of course you didn't. She looked toward the basement door and lowered her voice. Can I see it? I watched her eyes. You want to? I need to understand what happened. We went downstairs. The cabinet remained angled away from the wall. Evidence tape crossed the room opening. Isolde stopped 6 feet away and covered her mouth. It was an excellent reaction. Not theatrical. Not too big, she whispered. How could this have been here? I was wondering that. She looked at me. What do you mean? Nothing. I showed her the marks on the concrete where the cabinet had moved before. She crouched, studied them, then stood. Maybe the previous owner used the room. Maybe. Did police say? They're checking. She wrapped both arms around herself. This is horrible. I wanted to ask why she had known it was in the basement without asking where. I wanted to take the photograph from my pocket and slap it onto the laundry machine. Instead, I said, "There's more." Her face changed exactly the right amount. What? Storage unit in Winooski, rented under my name. She went still. It lasted less than 1 second. Then what? I told her about Unit 208, the clothes, the debit card, Alara Venn. As I spoke, she reached for the banister as if she needed support. Her breathing shortened. Her eyes filled. If it was acting, it was better than most performances I had paid to see. Dorian, no. She shook her head. Someone is framing you. The sentence came too quickly. Why do you say that? Because you didn't do this. How do you know? Her eyes locked onto mine. Because I know you. There it was. Not because you would never hurt a woman. Not because this is impossible. Because I know you. A precise answer. A useful answer. I said nothing. She took my hands. We need an attorney. Why? Because this is serious. Sloan said I'm not under arrest. Yet, that word dropped between us. I looked at her. Yet? She blinked. I mean, if somebody is building evidence, we cannot be naive. The word should have comforted me. Instead, it sounded tactical. That evening, Isolde cooked lemon chicken and rice. She poured wine, though neither of us drank much of it. She asked questions about Sloan. What exactly had he said? Had he asked about our finances? Had he taken my laptop? Had police searched the garage? Had they mentioned fingerprints? Each question was reasonable by itself. Together they formed a map of what investigators knew. At one point I put my fork down. You're asking a lot about procedure. She looked offended. My husband is being framed for something involving a missing woman. Forgive me for caring. I didn't say you didn't. You implied it. I said you're asking detailed questions. She leaned back. Because details matter. I stared at her. She noticed. What? Nothing. Later, while she showered, I photographed the picture of Alara on both sides and placed it back exactly where I found it. I did not take it to Sloan. Not yet. I needed to understand whether I was looking at proof or bait. If Isolde was innocent, the photograph could mean something harmless. Maybe she had met Alara through the foundation. Maybe Santa Fe possibility referred to an arts project. Maybe 7 weeks was a residency. I tried to build every innocent explanation available. Then I opened Isolde's public work calendar. No Alara Venn, no Santa Fe residency. No artist meeting matching the date written on the photo. At 11:08, Isolde came to bed and lay beside me. She turned off the lamp, rolled onto her side, and placed one hand on my chest. We'll get through this. I stared into the dark. Dorian? Yeah, I mean it. Her thumb moved once against my shirt. Familiar, tender. I thought of our first apartment, our cheap winters, the trips, the morning my father died, and Isolde sat beside me while I made phone calls. I wanted those memories to remain evidence that something had once been real. Then she asked a question that pulled me back into the present. Then she asked, very softly, "Did Sloan say when they found the storage unit?" I turned my head toward her. She could not see my face in the dark. Why? Just wondering. He didn't give an exact time. Oh, her hand stopped moving. 5 minutes later, her breathing settled into sleep. I stayed awake. At 1:26 a.m., I went downstairs, sat at the dining table, and opened a blank document on my laptop. At the top, I typed one word, timeline. Then I entered every fact I could remember. The leak, Bram's arrival, the hidden door, the message from Isolde, the police, Unit 208, Alara Venn, the photograph, every question Isolde had asked, every phrase that felt slightly too precise. At 2:03, I called the only person I knew who could look at a digital trail without getting hypnotized by emotion. Kellen Rusk answered on the 4th ring. If somebody isn't dead, he said, this better be spectacular. Kellen. He heard my voice and stopped joking. What happened? I looked toward the dark staircase where my wife slept. I need you to tell me whether someone has been living inside my identity. There was a long silence. Then his voice changed. Don't touch anything else, he said. I'll be there at 7. Kellen Rusk arrived at 6:52 the next morning, carrying 2 coffees, a laptop, and the expression he reserves for corporate executives who swear a breach could not possibly have happened. We had known each other since our 20s, back when he repaired office networks out of a van, and I stripped paint from antique window frames for landlords who paid late. Now he ran a small digital forensics firm that investigated stolen credentials, insider theft, and data tampering for banks and manufacturers. He had built a career around one principle: Systems rarely lie, but people become very creative when explaining what systems recorded. I sold left for the foundation office at 7:30. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving and told Kellen, "Please figure out who is doing this to us." "Planning to," he said pleasantly. The front door closed. Kellen waited 5 seconds. "Show me everything." We worked at the dining table for the next 4 hours. I gave him bank statements, phone records, cloud account logs, tax folders, credit card histories, and the timeline I had created after midnight. He did not start with the secret room. He started with access. Who pays household bills? Isolde. Who files taxes? Accountant, but she gathers the documents. Who knows your social security number? Isolde. Who has physical access to your phone? She does. Laptop? Sometimes. Primary email password? She knew the old one, maybe the current one. He looked over the top of his glasses. "Dorian, that answer means yes." I rubbed both hands over my face. "We are married. I'm not criticizing trust. I'm measuring exposure." That distinction hurt more than I expected. Kellen downloaded statements going back 6 years and built a spreadsheet. We found the first irregularity in month 8, a $92.40 transfer to a payment processor with a generic name. Then another 4 months later. Then a cash withdrawal at an ATM I almost never used. None of it looked dramatic. That was the point. The amounts stayed small, inconsistent enough not to become obvious, regular enough to accumulate. He grouped them by recipient, timing, and device identifier. By noon, a pattern appeared. $47,830, he said. I stared at the total. Over 6 years? 6 years and 2 months. That cannot be right. It is. Where did it go? Several places. 2 prepaid accounts. 1 payment app. A shell business called North Birch Consulting. Another account that appears closed. I have never heard of North Birch. Kellen clicked into a public business registry. Registered 18 months ago. Mailing address is a rented mailbox in Montpelier. Owner? He turned the screen toward me. Duran Elias Vale. For a moment I thought I might be sick. That is not mine. I know. How? Because the filing was submitted at 11:18 on a Wednesday morning last April. He opened another window. You were giving a preservation workshop at the Vermont Historical Society in Bear. Your event photos are time-stamped. There are 43 people who can place you there. I leaned back. Then whoever filed it used my information remotely. Correct. And your old email was used as the recovery address. I changed that password. 3 years ago? Yes. Who knew the old password? I did not answer. He did not need me to. We moved to phone logs. The online water mitigation service request had been created from my email account 47 minutes before I called the company. The browser session came from our home network. At that time, I was still at the workshop. My security camera showed me locking the shop at 6:02. The repair request had been submitted at 5:31. Isolde was supposed to be in Newport, I said. Supposed to be, Kellen repeated. She left Saturday. Do you have proof she was there Monday afternoon? She sent pictures. Pictures prove pictures exist. I looked at him sharply. Metadata, I asked. He nodded. Now you're thinking. The photos she had sent were stripped of location data, which was common after messaging apps compressed images. But one image showed a hotel ballroom with a digital schedule board in the background. Kellen zoomed in. The board displayed a donor dinner scheduled for Tuesday, not Monday. She could have taken that photo Sunday during setup, he said. My mouth went dry. Meaning she could have been anywhere Monday. Meaning we do not assume. That became his phrase. Do not assume. We did not assume the storage lease was forged merely because I said it was. We compared it to 20 authenticated signatures from contracts in my workshop files. The rhythm was almost right, but not exact. Whoever copied me consistently exaggerated the final stroke of the V in Vale. Would Isolde notice that, I asked. Kellen shrugged. Someone who has seen you sign things for 14 years might. We did not assume the prepaid account belonged to me. He found the setup device, a tablet registered to our household. The account had been created from our Wi-Fi at 1:12 a.m. 9 months earlier. I remembered that night. Not because of the account, but because I had food poisoning. I had spent half the night asleep on the bathroom floor. Isolde had brought me water, aspirin, and a cold towel. She had rubbed my back while I shook. At some point I had handed her my phone because I could not remember whether I had canceled an early client meeting. The memory hit me with almost physical force. She had my phone. Kellen looked at me. That night, she had it for hours. He said nothing. I stood and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, October rain slicked the deck. The maple tree beyond the fence was half bare. I watched one red leaf detach and spiral into the yard. What kind of person starts something like this 6 years ago? I asked. A patient one. I mean, what was she waiting for? That is the wrong question. I turned. Kellen closed the laptop halfway. You are thinking of this as a single plan with a starting date and an ending date. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe the first step was simply creating options. Money here, an account there, a copy of your signature, access to your devices. Then, when she decided what she wanted, she already had infrastructure. The word made me angry. Infrastructure. Yes, she's my wife, not a hostile government. I know. No, you don't. My voice rose before I could stop it. You did not sit beside her when her mother had surgery. You did not build shelves for her office. You did not spend 14 Christmas mornings with someone and then find out the same person may have been opening accounts in your name while you slept. Kellen let the silence absorb it. Then he said, "You're right." That was all. No defense. No correction. I sat back down. I'm sorry. Don't be. I don't know what I'm angry at. Yes, you do. I looked at him. You're angry because if the evidence is right, then some of your happiest memories happened at the same time as the setup. Your brain wants to separate the good years from the bad years. The records are telling you there may not have been a clean line. That sentence stayed with me. At 1:20, Kellen examined access logs from our home router. One device repeatedly appeared under a randomized hardware address late at night. It connected briefly, then disappeared. He could not identify it without the physical device, but the timing matched several suspicious financial actions. A second phone, I asked. Could be. Tablet, laptop, anything. He showed me the dates. One was the night of our 13th anniversary. Isolde and I had eaten at a small French restaurant near the waterfront. She had given me a brass marking gauge for the workshop, because I had admired one in a catalog and forgotten about it. I remembered being genuinely moved that she had noticed. At 12:44 that same night, an unknown device connected to our network. At 12:51, a transfer went from our household savings through North Birch Consulting. Two versions of the same evening existed now. In one, my wife knew exactly what tool I wanted because she loved me. In the other, she waited until I fell asleep after anniversary wine and moved money through a company wearing my name. I could not decide which version hurt more. At 2:10, Kellen packed his laptop. What do I do? First, change nothing. I stared at him. Nothing? If Isolde is involved and realizes you know, she will alter behavior, destroy devices, move accounts, call whoever is helping her. Right now she thinks you are confused. I am confused. Good. Let her believe confusion is all you are. That sounds like lying. It is withholding. From my wife, from someone who may be manufacturing evidence that connects you to a missing person. The sentence stripped away my objection. He gave me 3 rules. Preserve copies of everything. Do not access accounts in ways that could be interpreted as tampering. Document my own location and activity every day. Most importantly, do not confront Isolde alone with accusations I could not yet prove. What about Sloan? Eventually. But first, we need evidence that does not depend solely on you. I understood. If I walked into the police station and said my wife was secretly moving money and framing me, I would sound exactly like a man whose name had already appeared on too many suspicious documents. That evening, Isolde came home at 5:40 carrying groceries and a bouquet of yellow chrysanthemums. For the table, she said. I watched her cut the stems. Did Kellen find anything? Not much. Her scissors stopped for a fraction of a second. What does that mean? He thinks some account security is sloppy. Anything connected to the storage unit? No. She exhaled. Not visibly enough that anyone else would have noticed. I noticed. We ate dinner. She told me about a scheduling conflict at work. I told her about a church in Shelburne that needed 8 arched windows restored. We performed an ordinary marriage so perfectly that I wondered how long she had been better at the performance than I was. After dishes, she went upstairs. I waited 20 minutes and opened the drawer where we kept old tax folders. My passport was inside, my birth certificate, a photocopy of my driver's license, all normal. Then I noticed the clear plastic sleeve beneath them. It contained 5 blank sheets of paper. On each sheet was my signature, not a copy. Practice, dozens of attempts, Dorian Vale. Dorian Vale. Some were clumsy. Some were nearly perfect. At the bottom of the 5th page, one signature had a small check mark beside it. The final stroke of the V was exaggerated, exactly like the storage agreement. I heard the floor creak upstairs. I slid the papers back into place, closed the drawer, and stood. Isolde appeared at the top of the staircase. "What are you doing?" For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then I held up a roll of packing tape from the shelf beside me. "Looking for this," she smiled. "You scared me." "Sorry." She walked away. I stayed in the hallway after she disappeared. My heart beat hard enough to hear. That was the moment the last innocent explanation died. Not when I saw Alara's photograph. Not when Kellen found the money. When I saw my name written over and over by someone who had slept beside me for 14 years. She had practiced becoming me, and from that moment forward, I stopped asking whether my wife was involved. I started asking what she planned to make me guilty of. The next morning, I stood at the stove flipping eggs, while Isolde sat at the kitchen island scrolling through her phone. Sunlight came through the east window and caught the silver in her hair near one temple. She looked ordinary, familiar, almost gentle. That was the dangerous part. Monsters in stories announce themselves. Real betrayal often wears slippers and asks whether you remembered to buy coffee filters. "You sleep at all?" she asked. "A little." "You were restless." "Sorry." She looked up. "You don't have to apologize." I nearly laughed. Instead, I slid a plate toward her. She smiled. "Thank you." I realized then that I had spent most of my marriage believing calmness meant safety. It did not. Calmness was simply a condition. It could belong to a good man, a frightened man, or a person building a trap. At 9:10, I drove to Montpelier to see my cousin Renzo Weil. Renzo had spent 22 years working as an emergency communications dispatcher before taking a quieter job supervising municipal court records. He knew procedure, chain of custody, timestamps, and the difference between what people remember and what documents can prove. He was not dramatic. He owned 1 navy jacket, 3 identical pairs of work shoes, and a kitchen clock that had been 6 minutes fast since 2018 because, according to him, late people need consequences. We sat at his dining table. I placed copies of the storage agreement, bank records, call logs, Alara's photograph, and the pictures of the signature practice sheets in front of him. Renzo read everything without interruption. When he reached the final page, he removed his glasses. "Does she know you found these?" "No." "Does Sloan know?" "Not yet." "Does Kellen have copies?" "Yes." "Good." He put his glasses back on. "What do you want?" "I want the truth. That is not a plan. I want proof. Better." I told him I believed Isolde was communicating with someone. I had heard her take long calls in the glassed-in back room we called the conservatory, a narrow space filled with plants, books, and 2 chairs overlooking the yard. She often closed the French doors when she spoke with Maud Sarin, her closest friend. Maud planned boutique travel for wealthy clients and lived near Stowe. They had known each other since graduate school. Renzo leaned back. "You're thinking about recording?" "Yes." "Then you are thinking about legal exposure." "I don't know the rules," which means you do nothing until somebody who does tells you. That afternoon, Renzo arranged a short consultation with an attorney he knew through the court system. I did not ask the lawyer to become part of the investigation. I asked a narrow question about preserving conversations in my own home under Vermont law and about what I could lawfully record or monitor. I followed the advice exactly. No hidden cameras in private spaces, no hacking devices, no intercepting communications I was not legally permitted to record. The goal was not revenge. The goal was admissible, defensible evidence. That distinction mattered to me more than I expected. If Isolde was building a false case by crossing every line she could find, I was not going to beat her by becoming a different version of her. I purchased a small audio recorder that could sit openly enough to be lawful, within the plan we had discussed, yet unobtrusive enough not to attract attention in the common conservatory. Renzo helped me create a written log of installation time, model number, serial number, and storage process. Kellen configured redundant encrypted backups. "You people are making me feel like I'm launching a satellite," I said. Renzo looked at me. "You are trying to keep yourself out of prison." Fair. The first 3 days produced nothing. Isolde discussed work deadlines, catering invoices, donor lists, and a broken espresso machine at the foundation office. She called her dentist. She called Maud once and complained about a hotel in Providence. Nothing criminal. Nothing strange. Meanwhile, Detective Sloan continued asking questions. On Friday, he came to my workshop. The front room smelled of pine shavings and old paint. 6 window sashes rested on padded benches beneath hanging lamps. Sloan walked slowly past them. "You rebuild these?" "Mostly. Why not replace them?" "Because old things can work if you understand how they were made." He looked at me. I heard the accidental metaphor at the same time he did. "Marriage advice?" he asked. "Window advice." He nodded. Then he placed a paper on my bench. It showed a cash deposit of $3,200 into the prepaid account connected to Alara. Deeples made in Winooski 11 days before she disappeared. I wasn't there. We have not established that. I have a client in Middlebury who can. "What time?" "Afternoon." Deeples was 8:06 a.m. My stomach tightened. I searched my memory. That date was a Saturday. I had opened the workshop late because Isolde and I went to breakfast. Then I remembered. No, I had gone to breakfast alone. Isolde had said she had a migraine. I left home around 7:30. Sloan wrote it down. "Did your wife stay home?" "Yes." His pen stopped. I looked at him. He looked at me. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. "Detective," I said carefully, "if someone close to me were doing this, what would you need to believe it?" "Not belief." "Fine. What would you need?" "Independent evidence. Something not created by you, something corroborated." "What kind?" "A witness, original records, a communication, a person, Alara, the missing woman." I heard Kellen's voice in my head. "Evidence that does not depend solely on you." Sloan slipped the paper back into his folder. "Be careful, Dorian. Is that advice or warning?" "Both." That night, I made pasta. Isolde poured wine. She seemed unusually affectionate. She stood behind me while I chopped garlic and wrapped both arms around my waist. "I miss us," she said. My knife stopped against the cutting board. "We're standing in the same kitchen." "You know what I mean." I did. She wanted the old Dorian, the predictable one, the man who explained every feeling, the man whose silence made him uncomfortable enough to fill it. I set the knife down. "I'm just tired." She rested her cheek between my shoulder blades. "We should go away when this is over." "Where?" "Somewhere warm." My skin went cold. "Warm, maybe Curacao, maybe Cabo." I turned. Her expression was relaxed. "What?" "Nothing." She laughed. "You keep saying that." "Maybe I'm becoming mysterious." "You?" The way she said it was affectionate. That made it worse. "Never," she said. I smiled. Inside, something hardened. For the next 19 days, I became exactly what she expected. I went to work. I came home. I complained about Sloan. I pretended to worry that police might seize my business records. I asked Isolde what she thought I should do. That was the most important part. I let her advise me. "Stay calm," she said one night. "I'm trying. Don't start accusing people." "I won't, especially people close to us." I looked down into my coffee. "Why would I?" She touched my wrist. "Because fear makes people irrational." I nodded. She thought she was steering me. I let her. Every day I logged my movements. I photographed receipts. I saved parking records. I kept copies of emails. I created what Renzo called boring proof. Boring proof wins, he told me. I began to understand why. Drama is memorable. Documentation survives. On day 11, Kellen found another crack. A deleted cloud backup contained an address fragment tied to an account Isolde had used under an alias. N. Serenat. The rest was missing. Maud, I asked. Could be, or designed to look like Maud. Correct. I hated that answer. At this point, even suspicion required discipline. On day 14, Isolde received a call during dinner. She looked at the screen, did not answer. "Who was that?" I asked. "Work? Everything okay?" "Yes." Her phone buzzed again. She stood. I need to take this. She went to the conservatory and closed the French doors. The recorder captured 11 minutes, mostly silence. Then one sentence from Isolde, not on this line, nothing else. When I heard it later, my pulse jumped. Renzo did not react. That proves caution, he said. Caution about what? We don't know. I know. No. You believe. I slammed my palm on his table harder than I intended. Renzo, she practiced my signature. Yes. She has Alara's photo. Yes. My name is on the account. Yes. How much more do you need? He leaned forward. As much as it takes. I stared at him. He lowered his voice. You get one chance at this. If you confront her too early and she wipes everything, you will spend years trying to prove a story she has already prepared people not to believe. The anger drained out of me. He was right. Patience did not feel noble anymore. It felt like swallowing glass. Day 19 arrived on a Thursday. Maud Sarin came to our house at 6:12 p.m. I knew because I saw her silver Volvo turn into the driveway from the workshop camera app I had begun checking obsessively. At 5:45, I had told Isolde I was going to Kellen's office to review records. Don't stay too late, she said. I won't. Maud arrived carrying a bottle of wine and a cream overnight bag. I drove 4 blocks away, parked near a closed elementary school, and opened the secured audio feed. For 23 minutes, they talked about ordinary things. A client trip to Lisbon, a florist who had doubled prices, a mutual friend's engagement. I began to feel ridiculous. Maybe Maud knew nothing. Maybe the recorder would give me weeks of meaningless chatter. Then there was a clink of glass, a long silence, and Maud said, How much longer? Isolde answered, 3 weeks at most. My hand froze around the phone. Maud lowered her voice. And Dorian? Another pause, then my wife laughed softly. Dorian is exactly where I need him. I stopped breathing. In the dark car, 4 blocks from the house where I had slept beside her for 14 years, the entire world narrowed to the tiny speaker in my hand. Maud whispered, You're sure he doesn't know? Isolde answered with absolute confidence. He knows what I let him know. That sentence changed me. Not because it was cruel, because she believed it. And for the first time since the basement door opened, I was grateful she did. There are moments when your body understands danger before your mind gives it a name. Sitting in that parked car, listening to Isolde tell Maud that I knew only what she allowed me to know, I felt my shoulders settle instead of tense. My breathing slowed. The panic that had followed me since Bram found the hidden door simply disappeared. Fear survives on uncertainty. The second Isolde confirmed that she was directing events, uncertainty lost most of its power. Maud spoke first. You said 3 weeks. What happens then? The investigation becomes self-sustaining. I heard ice move in a glass. What does that mean? It means Sloane stops asking whether Dorian is connected to Alara and starts asking how. My stomach tightened. Maud said, That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters. No. I asked what happens to him. A pause. My wife's voice became colder than I had ever heard it in our home. He becomes the most reasonable explanation. I closed my eyes. 14 years of anniversaries, grocery lists, shared blankets, Sunday coffee, and quiet drives to nowhere collapsed into 6 words. The most reasonable explanation. Maud sounded uneasy. And Alara? Safe. Where? Santa Fe. My eyes opened. She agreed to 7 weeks. Isolde continued. The first payment was $9,500. She gets another 9 when it ends. $18,500. Maud exhaled sharply. You promised her this was financial. It is. You did not tell her police would treat Dorian like a kidnapping suspect. I told her she needed to disappear and not ask questions. That is not the same thing. No, Maud. It is better. Silence. I could picture Isolde, sitting in the wicker chair near the tall fern, one leg crossed over the other, speaking in the same measured tone she used when explaining seating charts. She never rushed when she believed she had control, Maud asked. Why him? I almost laughed at the question. Who else would my wife frame if not me? But Isolde answered differently. Because everything works through him. What does that mean? The house, the accounts, the credit, the workshop, even the cabin share in North Hero. If he is disgraced first, the divorce becomes easy. If he is charged, easier. Divorce. That word hurt more than the criminal plot for reasons I cannot fully explain. Maybe because conspiracy felt unreal, but divorce belonged to ordinary life. It meant she had imagined a future after me in practical terms. Furniture, property, paperwork, who got what. Maud's voice dropped. You could have just left. Isolde gave a small laugh. And spend years negotiating with a man who thinks fairness is sacred. I gripped the steering wheel. He would have divided everything cleanly, Maud said. Yes, half. And that is not enough? No. The answer came without hesitation. I felt something inside me finally break cleanly instead of painfully. Not rage. Attachment. Maud said, You are talking about a man who has never hurt you. You think that makes him innocent? Of this? Yes, that is not what I mean. Then what do you mean? I heard Isolde stand. Her footsteps crossed the conservatory floor. Dorian has spent his whole life assuming decency creates protection. He believes if he is patient enough, useful enough, honest enough, people will eventually be fair to him. Men like that are easy. My jaw tightened. He notices wood grain from 20 feet away, she continued. But he does not notice people until they become obvious. I could move money for years because he trusts routine. I could use his phone because he leaves it charging in the same place every night. I could copy his signature because he signs invoices at the same desk with the same pen. Predictability is a kind of permission, Maud whispered. You sound like you hate him. I don't. That answer surprised me. I never hated Dorian. Then what is this? Another long pause. Efficiency. I nearly opened the car door. The word made my vision flash white at the edges, not because it was the cruelest thing she could have said, but because it erased me. Hatred at least recognizes a person. Efficiency turns one into an obstacle. I put both hands flat on my thighs and forced myself to stay still. Do not assume. Do not react. Preserve. The rules had become a rope. Maud said, What about the basement? A stage. And the breathing? To make the technician call police before Dorian could control the scene. You triggered it? From Newport. So you were there? By then. I leaned closer to the phone. Isolde continued. I drove back Monday morning, submitted the service request from the house, reset the device, then took the train south and made the donor dinner before anyone noticed. My pulse accelerated. There it was. A timeline, a method, corroboration. Maud sounded stunned. You came all the way back just to set it? I came back because details failed when delegated. That was Isolde. That sentence was so perfectly her that I almost smiled. She had always checked place cards herself, always walked banquet rooms before guests entered, always carried backup tape, batteries, chargers, scissors, safety pins. She had transformed professional excellence into criminal discipline. Maud asked, And the storage unit? Set months ago, under his name? Obviously. Fingerprints? Enough. How? Things from the house, a glass, an old folder. He touches everything. I felt nausea rise. She had not needed to get my fingerprints onto objects in the storage unit by taking me there. She had simply taken objects I had touched. Every home is full of fingerprints. Maud became quiet. Then she said, I want out. The room inside my phone seemed to change. Isolde did not answer immediately. I'm serious, Maud said. I thought you were preparing for divorce. I thought Alara was helping create proof of an affair or financial misconduct. I did not agree to this. You have already agreed. No, you booked the Santa Fe lodging. My heart kicked. You transferred the first payment through your travel account. Maud's voice sharpened. You told me it was a private relocation, and you chose not to ask. That does not make me part of framing him. It makes you useful. Silence. Then Maud said something I will remember forever. You talk about Dorian like he is stupid. He is not. Isolde laughed. He is kind. That is not the same thing. Close enough. I stared through the windshield at an empty playground. Rainwater reflected streetlights on the blacktop. For years, I had worried that kindness made me look weak. I had swallowed arguments because peace mattered to me. I had given second chances because I believed relationships needed room. Hearing Maud defend me should have comforted me. Instead, it clarified something. Kindness becomes weakness only when you refuse to protect it. I saved the audio in 3 places. Then I called Kellen. He answered immediately. I have it. How much? Enough. Are you safe? Yes. Do not go home angry. I'm not angry. There was a pause. That worries me more. I know where Alara is, another pause. Where? Santa Fe. I'll call Orson. Who? Private investigator, former reporter, obsessive, difficult, perfect. I want him on a plane. He'll need details. I have details. I sent the audio through the encrypted folder. Then I drove home. That decision may sound insane. It was not. If I stayed away, Isolde might sense movement. If I returned normally, she would believe the conversation remained private. I parked at 9:14. Maud's car was gone. Isolde was in the kitchen rinsing 2 wine glasses. You're back early, she said. Kellen got tired of me. She smiled. Impossible. I hung my jacket. How was Maud? Good. What did you talk about? Nothing interesting. I looked at her. She looked back. For a fraction of a second, I wondered whether she could see everything. Then she dried her hands. I made soup. Great. We ate at the same table where Kellen had shown me $47,830 disappearing through my identity. Isolde talked about a donor who wanted his name moved higher on a program. I nodded. She asked whether Sloan had contacted me. Not today. Good. Why good? She lifted one shoulder. You need a break. I spooned soup into my mouth. It tasted like nothing. At 10:30, she went upstairs. I stayed in the living room. 5 minutes later, my phone vibrated. Kellen, Orson Peak can fly tomorrow. Needs full file by 6 a.m., I replied. You'll have it. Then another message arrived. From Detective Sloan. Can you come in tomorrow? New development. I stared at the screen. 2 investigations were now moving toward each other. His, mine. I did not know which would arrive first. At 11:03, Isolde appeared at the foot of the stairs. You coming to bed? In a minute. She watched me. Dorian? Yeah, whatever happens, remember I'm on your side. I looked directly at her. There are lies so large that the person telling them becomes almost beautiful in their confidence. I smiled. I know. She went upstairs. The moment she disappeared, I whispered to the empty room. No, Isolde, you were on my back. I opened my laptop and began building Orson Pike's file. By 2:40 a.m., it contained Alara's photographs, known addresses, the storage unit documents, suspicious payments, Maud's travel business information, the Santa Fe reference written on the hidden photograph, and the recorded conversation. At the end, I added one instruction. Find Alara alive. Do not contact Isolde. Do not frighten her. Get the truth. I closed the laptop. Then I walked into the bedroom. Isolde slept on her side facing away from me. Her phone rested on the nightstand, exactly where mine used to sit. For 14 years she had studied my predictability. That night I understood the flaw in her conclusion. Predictable men are not necessarily blind. Sometimes they are simply slow to believe the worst about people they love. And once belief changes, patience becomes a weapon no one sees coming. For the first time, I understood that restraint was not passivity. It was choosing the exact moment when truth could no longer be escaped. At 8:30 the next morning, he placed a grainy still photograph on the interview room table. It showed a man in a dark jacket entering the Winooski storage facility. On the night unit 208 was rented. The face was partly hidden by a baseball cap. The build was close enough to mine to be useful to anyone who wanted it to be me. That is not me, I said. Sloan folded his hands. We are enhancing the video. Good. You seem calmer. I know more than I did. His eyes narrowed slightly. What do you know? I thought about the recording. I thought about Kellen's rule. Independent corroboration. Not yet. I know somebody expected the evidence to point at me. That is still a theory. Yes, anything else? I looked at him. Give me a little time. His jaw tightened. Dorian, time is not always something investigators can give. I understand. Do you? Yes. He studied me for several seconds. Then he leaned forward. If you are conducting your own investigation, do not interfere with mine. I won't. Do not contact Alara's family. Do not threaten anyone. I won't. Do not destroy or move evidence. I won't. He sat back. You're answering very quickly because those are easy rules. What is the hard rule? I stood. Knowing when to stop trusting the person you married. He did not answer. Outside the station, I called Kellen. Orson landed in Albuquerque 30 minutes ago. Santa Fe? He rented a car. Anything from the travel records? Maud's agency booked a furnished casita under the name Elena Verne. Same initials. Cash equivalent travel credit. 47-day block. My heart accelerated. Address? Orson has it. I drove to the workshop and spent the next 6 hours repairing a pair of arched sash windows from an 1890s church. That may sound impossible. It was the only thing keeping me sane. Work gave my hands a problem they understood. Remove rotten wood. Square the joint, cut the patch. Fit it precisely. Do not rush glue. Pressure where needed. Patience where not. Human beings should come with joinery diagrams. At 4:18, Orson Pike called. His voice was dry, low, and impatient. I found her. I sat down on my workbench. Alive? Very. I closed my eyes. Relief came first. Not because I knew Alara. Because a living woman meant the darkest version of the case was false. Where? Casita on the east side of Santa Fe, she answered after I spent 20 minutes convincing her I was not police. Did she talk? She told me to leave. My stomach sank. Then what? I showed her a copy of the storage unit photo. Silence. She changed her mind. Orson explained that Alara had been promised $18,500 to vanish for 7 weeks. The first $9.500 had been paid through what she believed was a confidential arts relocation fund. Isolde had approached her months earlier after a mural project in Burlington, claiming a wealthy donor was testing a private program that helped artists escape harassment, debt collectors, or abusive partners by creating a temporary disappearance. Alara needed money. Her studio lease was behind. She believed the arrangement was ethically strange but not criminal. What did Isolde tell her about me? Very little at first. At first? Later she said you were a controlling husband and that any documents in your name were part of protecting the funding source. I laughed once. No humor. Of course, Dorian. She is scared. Of me? Of prison. Good. Orson's voice hardened. Careful. I knew what he meant. Fear can produce truth. It can also produce lies. What do you need? Permission to show her the audio. Do it. An hour later, he called again. Alara had listened to Isolde explain to Maud that the disappearance was meant to make me the most reasonable explanation. She cried. Orson said. I said nothing. She did not know. Do you believe her? I believe records more than tears. That was why Kellen liked him. What records? Messages, payment instructions, a printed schedule, burner phone directions. She kept everything because Isolde told her to destroy it. And people who get nervous often preserve the exact thing they were told to destroy. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Can she give a statement? She already agreed. By the next afternoon, Orson had a notarized statement, signed by Alara Venn, in front of a New Mexico notary. Copies of messages from an encrypted app, photographs of the casita, payment records showing $9,500 routed through a travel-related account, and a voice memo Isolde had sent telling Alara, do not contact family until I say the 7 weeks are complete. Most important, Alara agreed to speak directly with Burlington detectives through counsel. That was independent evidence. That was the wall collapsing. Kellen and I assembled everything. We did not edit the audio. We preserved original files and hashes. We included the signature practice photographs, router logs, business registration documents, bank transfers, the service request timestamp, the travel booking, Alara's statement, Orson's report. I made 1 copy for counsel, 1 for myself, 1 for Detective Sloan. At 9:05 on Monday morning, I walked into Burlington Police Headquarters carrying a Navy document box. Sloan met me in a conference room. What is this? The reason you are looking at the wrong person. He opened the box. I watched him read. His face did not change when he saw the bank records. It changed when he reached the audio transcript. He put on headphones. For 12 minutes, I sat across from him while he listened to my wife explain how to convert my life into evidence. When he removed the headphones, he looked older. Original file? Included. Legal recording? My attorney advised me on the method. Documentation is in the folder. Alara, alive in Santa Fe, counsel contact is tab 6. He opened tab 6, read, then looked at me. Why didn't you bring this earlier? Because earlier I had suspicion. Now I have corroboration. He stared at me for a long time. Did Kellen teach you that word? No. A pause. Renzo. Sloan almost smiled. Then he became serious again. You understand I need to verify all of this independently. I want you to. Do not contact Isolde about what you gave me. I won't. He stood and picked up the box. Go somewhere safe tonight. I live there too. That is not what I said. I understood. I left. But before I did what Sloan asked, I made one decision of my own. Not revenge. Pressure. I created a new email address from a clean device Kellen had configured. From it, I sent Isolde a single image. Elara Venn sitting outside the Santa Fe casita. Alive. In her hands was that morning's Albuquerque journal. No message. No threat. No explanation. Just proof that the secret she believed was buried had stood up and looked at a camera. I sent it at 4:07 p.m. Then I went home. Isolde arrived at 5:22. I was in the kitchen cutting carrots. She entered without calling my name. That alone told me the message had landed. Her footsteps crossed the living room. Stopped. Dorian, I kept cutting. Yes, did you send me something? I looked over my shoulder. Her face was pale. What? She held up her phone. The photograph. I got this from an unknown address. I dried my hands. Who is she? Her eyes searched mine. I had never seen Isolde search me before. She had always assumed she already knew what was there. You don't recognize her. I let 3 seconds pass. No. She swallowed. Police showed you a picture. Of Elara Venn? Her fingers tightened around the phone. There it was. A mistake. Small. Beautiful. I had not told her Elara's full name that evening in the basement. I had said the storage unit belonged to a missing artist named Elara, not Venn. Maybe Sloan had mentioned it later. Maybe she could explain it. But Isolde knew she had stepped wrong. Her eyes changed. Dorian, yes? What have you done? I laughed quietly. The question was so astonishing that I could not help it. What have I done? She moved closer. Do not play games with me. For the first time in 14 years, Isolde raised her voice, and I felt no instinct to calm her. I'm cutting carrots. You know what I mean. I really don't. She stared at me. Then she did something I had never seen. She slammed her phone onto the counter. The glass cracked. You think this is funny? No. Then stop smiling. I had not realized I was. I put the knife down. Isolde, why does a photograph of a living woman frighten you? Her mouth opened, closed. I stepped closer. Why? She is missing. Is she? Silence. The color drained from her face. I saw calculation begin behind her eyes. Old is old, fast is old. The event director trying to rebuild a room after the power failed. Who have you talked to? She asked. I said nothing. Kellen, nothing. Sloan, nothing. Dorian, answer me. And there it was, the flaw at the center of 14 years. She believed my answers belonged to her. I picked up the carrots and carried them to the stove. Behind me, her voice dropped. You have no idea what you are doing. I turned. No. I looked directly into her eyes. For once you don't. She stood perfectly still. A siren sounded somewhere beyond the neighborhood. Far away at first, then closer. Isolde looked toward the front windows. Back at me. Another siren joined it. Her composure fractured. What did you give them? I did not answer. She took one step toward me. What did you give them? I held her gaze. Enough. The word hit harder than shouting could have. She backed away. Not physically at first. In her face. In her certainty. In the invisible distance between the woman who had controlled the board and the man she had mistaken for a piece on it. Blue lights turned across the living room wall. Isolde whispered, You were supposed to panic. I heard car doors outside, I said. That was your second mistake. Her eyes locked on mine. What was the first? I stepped away from the counter. Thinking kindness meant I could not learn. Then someone knocked on the front door. For all the preparation Isolde had put into destroying my credibility, she had not prepared for consequence, arriving at our own door. Her breathing changed as she looked toward the stairs and conservatory. Searching for an exit her plan had never scheduled. Dorian, she said quietly. I did not answer. Another knock. Mr. Vale, Burlington Police. Isolde lowered her voice further. Do not open that door yet. That sentence almost made me laugh. For years she had used we whenever she wanted control to sound like partnership. Now consequence was outside, and suddenly the sentence was only hers. Now, at the edge of consequence, she said, Do not open that door. I walked toward it. She grabbed my wrist. It was the first time she had touched me that night. Listen to me. I looked down at her hand, then back at her face. Take your hand off me. She did. Slowly, I opened the door. Detective Sloan stood on the porch with Sergeant Vika Rowe and 2 other officers. The October air moved into the hallway behind them. Dorian, Sloan said. Step outside, please. I did. One officer entered, then another. Isolde remained in the living room. She did not run. That would have been beneath the person she believed herself to be. Instead, she straightened her shoulders. What is this regarding? Sloane stepped inside. Isolde Vale, we have a warrant for your arrest and a search warrant for the residence, your vehicle, and specified electronic devices. Her eyes moved to me, not to Sloane, to me. What did you tell them? Sloane interrupted. You do not need to answer questions. You will be advised of your rights. I am asking my husband. I stood on the porch. The word husband sounded absurd. Sloane nodded toward the officers. They moved toward her. Isolde lifted one hand. Wait. Everyone stopped. She looked at me with the same expression she wore when a gala went wrong, focused, certain that any problem could still be managed if everyone obeyed her quickly enough. Dorian, tell them this is a misunderstanding. No. Her mouth tightened. You do not know what you gave them. I know exactly what I gave them. You have context wrong. No. Maud is unstable. No. Alara lied. No. You think those records mean what Kellen says they mean, because you do not understand how the accounts were structured. I almost admired the reflex. Even with police in the room, she was trying to make my own intelligence the weak point. Sloane said, Mrs. Vale, she ignored him. Dorian, if you let them do this, there is no undoing it. I stepped back inside. That sentence is the first honest thing you've said to me in weeks. Her eyes sharpened. You think you won? No. I shook my head. This was never a game to me. Her face changed. For the first time, anger came through cleanly. You self-righteous coward. The room went still. Sloane watched. I did not react. Isolde laughed once, bitterly. You think sitting quietly makes you strong? You think collecting files while other people do the dangerous work makes you brave? I looked at her. No, I think not becoming you makes me strong. That landed. Her jaw flexed. An officer approached with handcuffs. She turned slightly away. Do not touch me until my attorney is present. Sloane replied, calm as stone. That is not how an arrest works. The cuffs closed around her wrists. I had imagined that sound before, not because I wanted it. Someone had spent years constructing a cage for me. Justice did not sound like thunder when metal finally closed elsewhere. It sounded small. It sounded small. 2 clicks. Nothing cinematic. Nothing satisfying enough to return 14 years. Isolde looked at me as officers guided her toward the door. You have no idea what happens next. I nodded. You're right, she paused. That used to terrify me. They walked her outside. Blue lights washed across the wet street. A neighbor stood behind a curtain. Another porch light came on. Isolde turned once before getting into the patrol vehicle. I expected hatred. What I saw was disbelief. That hurt more. After studying my schedule, signature, passwords, driving routes, and sleep for years, she still could not understand how I had become unreadable. The answer was simple. I had not changed into someone else. I had stopped explaining myself to someone who was using my explanations as instructions. The search lasted until almost 2 in the morning. Police searched until almost 2 in the morning. They seized laptops, phones, a hidden tablet, external drives, prepaid SIM cards, and files containing copies and templates built around my identity. Behind old event binders, they found draft forms and practice signatures, stored versions of me ready to be used. Sloane showed me one document before bagging it. It was a draft affidavit, my name at the top, a statement beneath it claiming I had met Alara through a restoration project and had become fixated on her. I read 2 paragraphs, then stopped. She wrote my confession. Sloane's face was tired. Looks like a draft. She wrote what I was supposed to become. He did not answer. The investigation expanded quickly. Maud cooperated through counsel. Alara returned voluntarily. Orson delivered original documents. Kellen supplied forensic records. And Renzo provided his evidence log. Server data tied the service request to my home network. Travel records showed Isolde had returned to Vermont before going back to Newport. Additional storage facility video showed a woman in the baseball cap, and her slight inward turn of the right foot matched the old skiing injury I had watched Isolde walk with for years. The legal process took months. Real consequences always do. There was no magical courtroom scene. There were hearings, interviews, financial reviews, device examinations, motions, and long stretches where consequence moved slower than emotion wanted. I filed for divorce. That part was strangely simple. My attorney asked whether I believed reconciliation was possible. No, not angry, not uncertain, just no. The house felt enormous after Isolde left. Her shoes disappeared from the entry, her coat from beside mine, and the cedar perfume slowly faded from the bedroom. I slept in the guest room for weeks, then removed the old bed with Renzo's help. When he asked whether I would buy another, I said, eventually. He nodded. Good. At first the quiet felt enormous. Her shoes were gone from the entry, her coat no longer hung beside mine. The cedar perfume faded from the bedroom. I moved into the guest room for 3 weeks because I could not sleep in the bed. Then one Saturday morning, I carried the mattress downstairs with Renzo's help and donated the frame. New one? He asked. Eventually, he nodded. Good. That was Renzo's version of therapy. The basement room remained after police released the scene. For a month, I kept the door open. Bram eventually returned and repaired the original leak, a cracked fitting near the utility sink. When he said he felt bad for being the one who found the room, I told him, "You were the one who noticed. That is different. I paid to remove the old cabinet, and by spring I stored restoration timber in the room, ash, white oak, and salvaged pine. I wanted useful, honest material in the place that had been designed for deception." The case eventually resolved through the actual charging and court process, with Isolde facing identity theft, fraud, conspiracy, evidence fabrication, and obstruction-related consequences. I did not get every punishment anger could imagine, because law is procedure, proof, and negotiation rather than revenge. But the central truth survived. I was cleared. Alara was alive. My identity was restored. The false trail collapsed. And Isolde lost the one thing she had depended on most. Control of the story. The divorce settlement became almost secondary. I kept my workshop. The house was handled through the legal process. Accounts were frozen, traced, and divided under counsel. I stopped measuring victory in property. The real thing I got back was my own interpretation of reality. That matters more than people think. When someone manipulates you for long enough, the deepest damage is not what they take. It is the doubt they plant. You begin asking whether you saw what you saw, whether you heard what you heard, whether your instincts are unfair, whether your boundaries are cruel, whether patience means enduring one more explanation. It does not. Patience is a virtue only when it is serving truth. When patience is used to postpone truth, it becomes self-abandonment. 6 months after the arrest, I was at the workshop on a Saturday morning, fitting new sash cords into an old frame when Kellen walked in carrying coffee. "You look boring again," he said. "Thank God." He handed me a cup. "Any regrets?" I thought about it. Not the marriage. That answer was obvious. I thought about the years before the basement, about how often I had dismissed small discomforts, because I believed good husbands did not make trouble. I regret confusing trust with the absence of verification. Kellen leaned against the bench. "That is a very forensic answer." "I've had bad influences," he smiled. I looked at the window frame front of me. 112 years old, paint cracked, wood scarred, still square, still repairable. Some things survive because their core remains sound. Other things look perfect until you remove the trim. That was my marriage. Beautiful from the room, rotten behind the wall. If there is one thing I want you to take from my story, it is this: love should make your life more truthful, not more confusing. Loyalty does not require you to ignore patterns. Kindness does not require you to accept disrespect. And patience does not mean giving someone unlimited time to harm you. Pay attention to the people who become angry when you ask reasonable questions. Pay attention to the people who need control more than they need honesty. Pay attention when your own life starts feeling like a story somebody else is writing for you. And if that happens, do not rush into revenge. Document, think. Get help. Protect yourself. Let facts become louder than panic. Isolde believed my predictability was permission. She believed a calm man was an easy man. She believed because I had loved her deeply, I would keep explaining myself until she could use every answer. She was wrong. My last move was not the arrest. It was the moment I stopped needing her version of me. My name is Dorian Vale. I am still 49, I still restore old windows. I still make coffee too strong. I still believe trust matters. I just know now that trust and blindness are not the same thing. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it gave you something to think about, if you have rebuilt after betrayal, or if you believe consequences matter, please subscribe, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps these stories reach more people. And wherever you are listening from, remember this. You do not have to become cruel to stop being easy to hurt. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is finally open the hidden door.